Hi guys, welcome to the channel. So today I'm going to be talking about the different circumstances under which a counselor or therapist would have to break confidentiality. So there's two different circumstances, but there are 6 different reasons why a counselor or therapist would have to break confidentiality. So let's get into it. I know some people fear going to therapy, and I've seen stuff online about don't go to therapy because if you're too honest, then they'll send you to a mental health institute. I once told my therapist about this, reported me, and I know there's this fear and misconception around, like, if you talk about suicide or if you say certain intrusive thoughts to a therapist, that they're going to immediately have you sent to a mental health hospital. That is simply not true. We don't necessarily have the power to do that. Of course, our word counts for a lot, but that is not going to be the end result. And me personally, I've never sent anyone or reported anybody in such a way that they've had to end up in a mental health institute. Never, ever, ever. And in all honesty, that would probably be the last resort. It wouldn't be the first resort to somebody talking about suicidal feelings or anything like that. So this is not just for the clients watching, but this is also for the future therapists and future counselors watching, because this is something you also need to know off by heart, especially when you're contracting with your clients, to tell them exactly how confidentiality works. There's 2 different circumstances under which confidentiality has to be broken. One is usually because of legal obligation, and the second one is because of discretionary disclosures. So first, let's talk about the legal obligations. So if a client speaks about certain things, a counselor or therapist will have a legal obligation to break confidentiality if a client discloses these 4 things: acts of terrorism, drug trafficking, money laundering, court orders or subpoenas. Under these circumstances specifically, a counselor or therapist would not be allowed to tell the client that they are going to break confidentiality. You wouldn't be allowed to say to your client, because you've told me about drug trafficking or human trafficking or whatever else it may be, I am now going to break confidentiality and let's discuss it. A therapist would not be expected to do that. You would not be able to do that for obvious reasons. It might put you in danger. It might put your loved ones in danger. It might also mean that the police is not able to step in and do something because they're now going to quickly cover up their crime because they know that you're going to go to the police. So under those 4 circumstances, if a client comes to you and says, I'm involved in terrorism, or I'm involved in drug trafficking or money laundering, or I've been a part of this and a part of that, then it's your legal obligation as a counselor and therapist to go to the police and the relevant legal authorities to let them know that this is the case and this is what's happened. The second circumstance under which a therapist might have to break confidentiality would be discretionary disclosures. And these are child protection and safeguarding, protection of vulnerable adults, and risk of suicide or serious self-harm or harm to others. So in this case, your therapist would have to let you know and would have to speak to you about possibly breaking confidentiality, and it would be something that they discuss with you and bring to you. It's not something that they would do behind your back, simply because there might be a better way forward than breaking confidentiality. And in this case, of course, it's not going to be a case of, because you've told me, I now have to refer you to a mental health hospital. Like I said, guys, it's not the first solution. It's not the first resort. It's not the first thing on the list that we go to, right? Most of the time, it'll be a case of maybe referring you to another service where you can get the specialist help that you need, maybe a more specialized type of therapy, maybe referring you to your local crisis service so that should anything happen, they know who you are, they know what to look out for, and you can also call them. Maybe you are in a moment where you really feel like self-harming or you really feel low. If they get called, they know your situation, they know your circumstances, and they can come to you, they know where you live, and they can help you immediately, and they are available 24/7. So it wouldn't be a case of, like, now because you've disclosed to me that you have a high risk of suicide, I'm going to send you to a mental health hospital. No, that's not the case at all. There's a lot of other steps that we'd go through first before even considering that, because in all honesty, sending you to a mental health hospital would not even be something that's going to lead to a better solution or a better ending anyway. Like I said, I've worked in mental health hospitals and I've seen how those places are, and they're not the most productive in terms of helping people's mental health. However, it's important that you take these things to your supervisor, because there are some cases where it might not be best to speak to your client about breaking confidentiality. So for example, if there is something around child abuse being spoken about, maybe your client is the one that has taken part in or did abuse a child or is abusing a child, and you can see that from what they've said, then in this case, it probably wouldn't be best to tell them that you're going to break confidentiality for obvious reasons. So it's probably in some cases best to go to your supervisor and speak about how best to handle the situation. So this is not to say that in all of these cases you have to go to your client and talk about how you're going to break confidentiality. Every case is unique and every client is unique, so you have to take it as it comes. And this is why it's important to have a supervisor who's more knowledgeable and more experienced than you, so that they can help you through situations like this. And if you're working for a specific company or organization, they'll probably have certain guidelines in place for you to follow under, so that you know what to do. Now let's quickly go over the do's and don'ts of confidentiality for you to take away from this video. So number one, do discuss confidentiality with your client during the contracting phase, and the sooner you do it the better. Usually the first session is the best time to go over it. Take the first part of the session to go over the contract, be very specific, be very clear, allow your client to ask any questions that they have around confidentiality. Give them a copy of the confidentiality clause or the contract so that they can keep it and read it in their own time as well, and maybe send them a digital copy over email if you don't have a physical copy, or if your sessions are online. Just make sure that it's very, very clear and that they have a copy of it, so that should anything happen, they are very aware. This is not something to gloss over and to miss with your client. Do be clear about the possible exceptions of confidentiality, as I've discussed in the video, so you can refer to that as well, and also refer to the company and the organization that you're working for and their policies around confidentiality. Be explicit about who you need to share their information with and who else might have access to their records. So for example, your supervisor will be someone that you speak to about your client, so letting them know that I will speak about you maybe in a supervision group or in my one-to-one supervision. And of course, if you do have to break confidentiality, who will you be going to and who will you be sharing that information with? And do provide a privacy notice for your clients so that they are clearly aware of everything that is required of you in your practice. On the other side, don't promise total confidentiality, because that's not the case, as I've already explained. Where you will have to break confidentiality, you might have to go behind your client's back technically because of the rules around confidentiality. And don't leave the conversation about confidentiality too late. Make sure you have it as soon as possible and you make it as clear as possible to your client what's involved in confidentiality. So I really hope that this helps. If you want more videos like this for future counselors, I have a playlist which you can watch, which is called For Future Counselors, which has everything you need to know about preparing for your future as a counselor and therapist. So be sure to watch that next, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.